So, welcome everybody. Hopefully everybody who was sick is on the downhill side of it and all back together here again. So we finished last week, or not last week, but the week before, Judges chapter 8. And we finished at the end of the life of the judge Gideon. And just in 1 week went all the way through all of Gideon's adventures and ended with him dying in a good old age and was buried in the tomb of his father. And we did read verses 33 through 35 in chapter 8 the last time we were together, but I'm going to go ahead and read it again because as we continue going through here in Judges, a lot of the chapters actually end with what is a little bit of an introduction to the next section. So it starts off in verse 33 saying, as soon as Gideon died, the people of Israel turned again and whored after the Baals and made Baal Berith their god. And the people of Israel did not remember the Lord their God, who had delivered them from the hand of all their enemies on every side. And they did not show steadfast love to the family of Jerubbaal, that is Gideon, in return for all the good that he had done to Israel. So we're going to be going on tonight, continuing in the theme of the hearts of the people straying away from the Lord, and actually kind of taking a little bit of a different direction in chapter 9, looking at a guy named Abimelech, who is not one of the judges of Israel. And he was not a follower of the Lord. He is someone who seems to be put before us to kind of show the direction that the hearts of Israel is going away from being a people who follow after God, both spiritually and in their government, to a people who are interested in having a king that is over them. We already saw with Gideon last week that the people's response to his victory is to ask him to become king and for his sons and grandsons to be kings over them. And he denies that, but then he goes on to have 70 sons, among whom is this guy Abimelech, who loosely translated, this name Abimelech means my father is king. So, it seems that Gideon did have somewhat of a, mixed idea of how the position that he should be in over the people. And then that continues on down to his son Abimelech, who we're going to be reading about tonight. So I'll go ahead and open with a prayer, and then we'll get into our study tonight. Lord, just thank you for just bringing us all back together here again. Just pray that we would learn insight through your word tonight and wisdom, both of things that you would have us do and the things that you would have us to not do, the straight path that we can follow that leads to you, and the winding path that leads in so many different directions, Lord, that your people, especially this man that we're looking at tonight, take. And just pray that would be impressed on our hearts, that my words would fall to the ground, but that yours would stand, and that we would just gain confidence in our lives and in our walks with you through your word. Amen. Okay. So Gideon reigned over the people of Israel for 40 years after he defeated the Midianites. Sorry about that. And after he defeated the Midianites, he basically kind of consolidated his rulership over all the people. Anyone that was here would, when we looked over it, remember that he was a very humble person in his circumstances, that he was not by any means the natural choice to be a leader over Israel. And when the Lord comes to him and calls him and gives him the direction to fight against the enemies of Israel, his response is that he is, the lowliest of sons inside of the lowliest family inside of Israel. And so he doesn't approach his ministry to the Lord with a lot of confidence, something that we see from a lot of guys that the Lord, picks to be his kings, or not kings, but his leaders over the people, whether it be Moses or Gideon or King Saul, as we're going to see later. There was a lot of trepidation and fear that Gideon had. And the Lord, though, he saw him in a different light. Whenever the angel of the Lord appeared to him, he called him a mighty warrior and a man of valor. And at the time, Gideon was hiding away from the enemies of his people down in a wine vat or a wine press, threshing his grain. And so the Lord takes Gideon and turns him from a man whose heart is kind of weak and timid to a guy who is able, through the power of the Lord, to defeat giant armies through faith. That's the thing that we see that's really important about Gideon, and the thing that brings his notoriety all the way into the book of Hebrews is that he operated by faith. That was his deal, which is kind of cool as we see the parallels between this and what we're studying in Romans right now, that Romans chapter 1, verse 17, that we are to live by faith, that's where our righteousness comes from. And now we see again in this circumstance, which we see a lot with the people of Israel in ancient times, that even when one generation was following after the Lord in faith, that didn't necessarily translate to the next generation at all. And so we're going to see that with this son Abimelech. So Abimelech is the son of a concubine of Gideon's. So we don't know how many wives Gideon had, but he must have had a lot because he had 70 sons. Those definitely not all from one wife. And he also had another woman that was not even his official wife. She was just a concubine, and she was in the land of Shechem. And she bore Gideon a son, and Gideon, called his name Abimelech, which again means my father is the king. So chapter 9, verse 1 begins by saying that Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, so Jerubbaal is another name of Gideon. It's a name that was given to Gideon by Gideon's father when Gideon tore down the altar of Baal and destroyed his place of worship. And it means let Baal basically contend for himself. So this was a name of like pride and a reminder that he was an enemy to the enemies of God. So Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem to his mother's relatives and said to them and the whole clan of his mother's family, "Say in the ears of all of the leaders of Shechem, which is better for you, that all 70 sons of Jerubbaal rule over you, or that one rule over you? Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh." So he's laying out before the people what is called a false equivalency. He's giving them two options and making them choose between two options that, with the benefit of hindsight, we know are two incorrect options. And he wants the people to choose between the two. And the two options he gives them is have the 70 sons of Gideon rule over them, or just him. The thing is that neither the 70 sons of Gideon or Abimelech have any right to reign over the people. The only person, as Gideon pointed out, that has a right to reign over the people of Israel is God. But that concept is seemingly lost between Gideon and his sons. He clearly didn't, raise them to understand that the power that he held was not going to be theirs whenever he died. He may have told them that, but it seems that he probably lived in such a way that they actually believed that the power belonged to their family and not to God. So there's a lot of examples that we see in the Bible where there are two options given by man, and some of the times the men or women involved even try to get God to help them make the better decision between the two options. And a lot of times God isn't really going to be in that because he doesn't want either of those options. And so it is, I'm confident that God is not in either Abimelech or any of his brothers being king over Israel. That's not what is supposed to be happening here. So Abimelech goes and he's appealing to the people of Shechem, but it is his goal to rule over the whole people of Israel. He doesn't just want to rule over Shechem, but he's going there because that's where any power base that he might have exists, is in the place where his mother's family lives. Because as the son of a concubine, he doesn't have any legitimate claim to his father's household. That is a case where he is going to be looked upon by his father's household as an illegitimate son and somebody who is to be put away from them. So he probably, if he had any relationship with any of his 69 brothers or any of his other siblings, it probably wasn't good. It was probably a contentious and somewhat hateful relationship. And so he leaves the rest of his family, his father's household when he dies, and goes to his mother's household. And he is appealing to his mother's family to put him in power in any way that they can. He's basically asking for their support. So verse 3 says that his mother's relatives spoke all these words on his behalf in the ears of all the leaders of Shechem, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech, for they said, "He is our brother." And they gave him 70 pieces of silver out of the house of Baal-Pirath, with which Abimelech hired worthless and reckless fellows who followed him. And he went to his father's house at Ophrah, and he killed his brothers, the sons of Jerubbaal, 70 men on one stone. But Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. And all the leaders of Shechem came together, and all at Beth Millo, and they went and made Abimelech king by the oak at the pillar of Shechem. So the beginnings of the inter-family war that happens with Gideon's descendants, it actually starts and ends pretty quickly among the brothers. The people in Shechem had clearly been worshiping false gods for long enough to accumulate some money inside of the place that they came together to worship this god. It said in chapter 8 that Baal-Pirath became the god over all the people of Israel. They chose him as their god after the death of Gideon. So during this period in Judges of ups and downs between God and the people of Israel, they are constantly having a time of peace after the judge that rules over them defeats their enemies, and they follow after God while that judge is alive. And then every time it says that after the judge dies, the people go back to another god. And the optimist inside of me wants to look at that and think about kind of like maybe just a slow drifting away from God, people's hearts growing cold and, one by one, kind of drifting away from their relationship with God. Because that seems like a little bit of a more cheery picture than the entire people of Israel when this judge dies coming together and just saying, we are no longer God's people. We are going to choose another God. But that is seemingly, at least in this circumstance, what they did. It says simply that they made Baal-Pirath their god. And so they are worshiping him. That involves, a priesthood. It involves making sacrifices to this false god, building places of worship within the land which were all supposed to be torn down by Gideon. But we don't necessarily see that he did do that. And it seems that also they were sending money into this place of worship as well. And clearly that money goes to bad purposes right away. They take 70 pieces of silver out of Baal-Pirath's house. These are pieces of silver that were, again, paid in to worship this false god that the people of Israel put over themselves. And they pay those, give those pieces of silver to Abimelech, and Abimelech gives them to worthless and reckless fellows who follow after him. So those would be mercenaries, basically, men for hire. It's kind of like the Old West gunfighter scenes where two ranches are having problems with each other, or maybe even ranchers and then sheep farmers. And so, in this circumstance, he hires these guys as hired guns, more or less, to go and not even to fight a battle, but to go and simply kill his brothers who might be in opposition to him to be king. I don't know whether this was necessary or not. We don't have anything telling us whether these brothers even intended to try to take rulership over the people of Israel or not. But, it's pretty common throughout history. I've been recently going through a history of ancient Rome. And man, every time that there is a succession from one Roman emperor to another, there's many, many circumstances where hundreds or thousands or even tens of thousands of people who might be in opposition to the new emperor are either killed or have their possessions taken away from them and, sold in order to get money for the new emperor. But it seems that kind of a lot of those things are happening here all together. But Abimelech is doing whatever he has to do to solidify his control over the people of Israel. So verse 7 says that when it was told to Jotham, when it was told to him that they had made Abimelech king, he went and stood on Mount Gerizim and cried aloud and said to them, before I go into that, I actually want to mention as well that this place, the oak at the pillar, by the oak pillar, forgive me, I'm having a hard time here. So this pillar and the oak at Shechem is the place where Joshua put a copy of the law when the people came in and had taken over and defeated their enemies inside of Israel. And, it's probably not coincidental that the people took Abimelech to this place in order to crown him their king, because what they're doing is in opposition to God. And, a lot of times when people do something in opposition to God, they want to hide away from it and kind of pretend like God is not even involved at all or that God doesn't have an opinion on it. But
where was that at? That you said he put the copy of the law?
So it can be in.
Oh, you can give it to me later.
Okay, yeah, it's in the book of Joshua.
Now, he's talking about the law of Moses?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, seemingly the law of Moses plus the book of Joshua, because it said that he wrote also what we were reading, and then.
It's fair to ask questions.
Yeah, that's fine. Okay. So this place where Joshua had placed a copy of the law, they had brought Abimelech there and made him king, basically in the presence of the law, where the people had the ability to compare and see what they were doing was in opposition to God. So he goes up on top of Mount Gerizim and he speaks to the people from there. So Jotham again is the one brother that has survived the massacre of the rest of his brothers, and he goes on top of Mount Gerizim. So Mount Gerizim is the mountain where the people proclaimed the blessings to Israel if they were to follow after the laws of God. It's interesting to me that he went on top of Mount Gerizim because right opposite of that is Mount Ebal, and Shechem is in the valley in between. And Mount Ebal is where they went and proclaimed the curses if the people disobeyed God. So, it's kind of interesting that he went and proclaimed this from Mount Gerizim, the place of blessings, instead of Mount Ebal, the place of curses. Seemingly that there is still hope for the people to redeem themselves in the eyes of God if they don't continue with what they're doing. So he says, verse 8, the trees once went out to anoint a king over them. So this is more or less, a parable that he is speaking, through the wisdom of God to the people. So the trees are, the people of Israel, basically, or in more specific, the leaders of Shechem. So the trees went out to anoint a king over them, and they said to the olive tree, reign over us. But the olive tree said to them, shall I leave my abundance by which gods and men are honored and go hold sway over the trees? And the trees said to the fig tree, you come and reign over us. But the fig tree said to them, shall I leave my sweetness and my good fruit and hold sway over the trees? And the tree said to the vine, you come and reign over us. But the vine said to them, shall I leave my wine that cheers God and men and hold sway over the trees? Then all the trees said to the bramble, you come and reign over us. And the bramble said to the trees, if in good faith you are anointing me king over you, then come and take refuge in my shade. But if not, let fire come out of the bramble to devour the cedars of Lebanon. So this is an interesting picture that Jotham is painting for the people, especially for the leaders that have have sought out Abimelech to be king over them. So each of the trees that Jotham speaks of, the olive tree and the fig tree, and then ultimately the vine, are in this description, they are noble because they're wise enough to understand the place that God has put them in, and not just the place, but the role that they have been given naturally. So, in this situation, I believe that Jotham is probably talking about his brothers and himself, who may have been approached by the people of Israel to be kings over the people of Israel, and who chose, instead of becoming kings, to stay in the proper place that God had given to them. So he's pointing out the nobility of trees or of men who choose to stay in the proper role that God has given to them. And then he points out Abimelech as a bramble, which to our American ears, would be like a tumbleweed, basically. And he is basically calling Abimelech a tumbleweed, and is having him say, ironically, tell the people that if you are in good faith anointing me to be king over you, come and take refuge in my shade. Which, I'm sure all of y'all have seen tumbleweeds before. They don't really give any shade. And, it's kind of a picture that Jotham is putting before the people of an emptiness. It's a kind of conspicuous thing about a tumbleweed, is that it has a lot of volume, but it is totally empty. There's no substance to it at all. And it doesn't have the ability to shade or to protect anything. It's basically worthless. And so, he's pointing out that the people who have asked the bramble to be king over them are, seeking after something that may appear or look or feel good, but, ultimately is something that's vapid and empty. So he moves on from his metaphor here and now says in verse 16, "Now therefore, if you acted in good faith and integrity when you made Abimelech king, and if you have dealt well with Jerubbaal," again Gideon, "in his house, and have done to him as his deeds deserved, for my father fought for you and risked his life to deliver you from the hand of Midian, and you have risen up against my father's house this day, and have killed his sons, 70 men on one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his female servant, the king over the leaders of Shechem, because he is your relative. If then you have acted in good faith and integrity with Jerubbaal and with his house to this day, then rejoice in Abimelech and let him rejoice in you." So he's obviously speaking tongue-in-cheek here, because neither he or anybody else thinks that they are acting in good faith. Obviously, somebody acting in good faith does not go and kill, 70 men or young men or boys. And so he is, pointing out the people's flaw before them, essentially. And he goes on in verse 20 to say, "If not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech." And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and lived there because of Abimelech, his brother. Obviously, he has no reason to think that Abimelech's not going to try to kill him. The rest of the brothers were killed just for the sake of convenience and safety, and now he is directly spoken out against him. And it's interesting that he isn't even really invoking the Lord against these men, or invoking anything in his own power. I think, interestingly, what he's pointing out is that an arrangement like this that is not in good faith, the natural consequences of it is that it is not going to last, and that that these people who have turned on others to form a alliance are eventually going to turn on each other as well. So verse 22 says that Abimelech ruled over Israel, so not just Shechem, but over Israel for 3 years. And God sent an evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem, and the leaders of Shechem dealt treacherously with Abimelech. So God, even though, in this story, the Lord hasn't really been intimately involved that we see. Obviously, the Lord is involved with everything that happens among his people, but This story hasn't talked about the Lord speaking to Abimelech or speaking to Jotham or, really being directly involved in any of this. But the Lord's not going to let a situation that is displeasing to him continue among his people. We see multiple times that regardless how upset the Lord is with his people, he always has compassion towards them and wants to bring things back into alignment with his purposes for the people. It's easy to kind of get into the minutia of what we're looking at and lose track of what the point of Israel was. But, that's the thing, is that Israel was intended by God to be a people who were in close alignment to his ideal of living as a man on earth. And they were meant to be God's representatives to the people around them. And unfortunately, what we're looking at in Judges is a constant failure of his people to live up to those standards. And the positive side of it is God constantly doing whatever he needs to do to bring the people back into alignment with himself until they ultimately fall away again. And it's just a constant cycle. But God, he gives Abimelech 3 years, evidently, and enough is enough. And so he puts a evil spirit between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. And the leaders of Shechem deal treacherously with Abimelech. So, what does that mean, that God put an evil spirit between them? I don't think this is metaphorical. I don't think it's I don't think it's anything except for reality. We see throughout a lot of the Old Testament and the New, in the book of Daniel and Revelation, that specific kingdoms and specific places, specific churches, specific periods of time have angels and fallen angels that are involved in spiritual warfare. Specifically in Revelation, we see, the angels of all of the churches. And then in Daniel, we see Michael, the archangel, fighting against the prince of Persia. And, that's a specific angel that, Michael is a specific angel that is fighting against a specific fallen angel, the prince of Persia. That is a fallen angel because God's angels that have not fallen don't fight against each other. So, it becomes just logical looking at it. But likely, God is using a fallen angel, an evil spirit in this situation in order to put pressure between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. We do see different times in Scripture that God communicates with Satan specifically. In the book of Job, Satan presents himself before God with the rest of the angels, and there are interactions between, as I was mentioning, between angels and demons and God and Satan. There's evidently a lot of intricacy to spiritual warfare that we don't really understand. But to kind of boil it down, that's what's happening here, is God is instituting some spiritual warfare between Abimelech and the leaders of Shechem. Verse 24 says that the violence, so the purpose is that the violence done to the 70 sons of Jerubbaal might come, and their blood be laid on Abimelech, their brother, who killed them, and on the men of Shechem, who strengthened his hands to kill his brothers. And the leaders of Shechem put men in ambush against him on the mountaintops, and they robbed all who passed them along the way, and it was told to Abimelech. So, basically, they make Abimelech king over them, and then 3 years later, they decide that they want to rebel against the king that they put over them. A very substantial way that kings and leaders would make money and would be able to strengthen their kingdoms is by charging, taxes and toll charges to people who are traveling on the trade routes in their area. And Shechem is actually in a pretty significant trade route, and so when it says that they put men in ambush against him on the mountaintops and robbed all who passed by them along the way, it's very likely that they were intending to weaken Abimelech as king, both in his stature and his financial situation, by robbing all of the traders who passed along the way. And so they told Abimelech that his city had gone into rebellion against him, and Gaal, the son of Ebed, moved into Shechem with his relatives, and the leader of Shechem put confidence in him. And they went out into the field and gathered grapes from their vineyards and trod them and held a festival. And they went to the house of their God and ate and drank and reviled Abimelech. And Gaal the son of Ebed said, "Who is Abimelech, and who are we of Shechem that we should serve him? Is he not the son of Jerubbaal, and is not Zebul his officer? Serve the men of Hamor, the father of Shechem, but why should we serve him? Would that this people were under my hand, then I would remove Abimelech, and I would say to Abimelech, increase your army and come out." So this guy seems to be an outsider from the city, and in this time of rebellion against their king, he moves into the city and starts trying to build influence with the people inside of the city. And I don't think it's coincidental that this declaration of war is made after they've gone out and made wine and are partying for a little while. He's seemingly got some some false courage going, and they are doing things in the open. Again, when these kind of things are happening, sometimes they'll be done behind closed doors until they're sure that they have enough allies to defeat the person they're trying to fight against. But they go and hold their festival openly in the house of their God and eat and drink and revile or curse the king. And then eventually this guy says, "Man, if you guys would just put me in charge, I would take care of Abimelech. And if he was here, I would say, increase your army and come out." Verse 30 says that when Zebul, the ruler of the city, heard the words of Gaal, the son of Ebed, his anger was kindled. So Zebul is basically there governing in the place of Abimelech while Abimelech's not there. So he is on Abimelech's side. He sent messengers to Abimelech secretly, saying, "Behold, Gaal the son of Ebed and his relatives have come to Shechem, and they are stirring up the city against you. Now therefore go by night, you and the people who are with you, and set an ambush in the field. And in the morning, as soon as the sun is up, rise early and rush upon the city. And when he and the people who are with him come out against you, that you may do to them as your hands find to do." So Abimelech and all the men who were with him rose up by night and set an ambush against Shechem in 4 companies. And Gaal the son of Ebed went out and stood in the entrance of the gate of the city. And Abimelech and all the people who were with him rose from the ambush. And when Gaal saw the people, he said to Zebul, "Look, people are coming down from the mountaintops." And Zebul said to him, "You mistake the shadow of the mountains for men." Gaal spoke again and said, "Look, people are coming down from the center of the land, and one company is coming from the direction of the diviner's oak." Then Zebul said to him, "Where is your mouth now, you who said, 'Who is Abimelech, that we should go serve him?' Are not these the people whom you despised? Go out now and fight with them." And Gaal went out at the head of the leaders of Shechem and fought with Abimelech. And Abimelech chased him, and he fled before him, and many fell wounded up to the entrance of the gate. And Abimelech lived at Armah, and Zebul and drove out Gaal and his relatives so that they could not dwell at Shechem. So in this time, I don't think there was hardly any consolidated kingdom inside of Israel. Nothing like we'll see in the time of Saul and then David and Solomon. More than likely, Abimelech is only claiming kingship over the rest of Israel because nobody's really coordinated enough to say anything about it. Not that he is, actively ruling over the entire country, but it's more like, the country is still much like a frontier at this point. And so all of this battle, and struggle for power seems to just be happening in the area of Shechem. There aren't really any larger armies that are getting involved at this point, and a lot of people specifically have pointed out that it's kind of giving him a lot of credit to claim that he was a king or to even call it a kingdom. It was, more just kind of a feudal city, and really a squabble between 2 different families that live inside of the city. So he really doesn't even have much of a battle. It doesn't seem like, or really much of a defeat, because Gaal and his relatives, they just get to go and leave and live somewhere else. If this was happening in the day of King Saul, this man and his entire family would have been wiped off the map. There would be nothing left. The army would probably either be all killed or subsumed into the other king's army, and there wouldn't be any, happy parting of ways and one family going one way and the other going the other way. That's definitely not what's going to be happening later on in the legitimate kingdoms of Israel. So this is really more just a squabbling of pride between two families, and a time in which the people of Israel, again, forget. It's interesting, uses the word forgetting about the Lord. They forget the Lord's leadership over them and are willing to be ruled over by what turns out to really be such kind of a pathetic guy in the people that are following him. There's nothing impressive about what is happening here. And really, this whole story is, I think, more or less a example to show, the people of Israel and those who read the law and the judges after this, that seeking after power outside of God's approval is pointless. I think that's what it's trying to show. So verse 42 says, "On the following day, the people went out into the field, and Abimelech was told. He took his people and divided them into 3 companies and set an ambush in the fields. And he looked and saw people coming out of the city. So he rose against them and killed them. Abimelech and the company that was with him rushed forward and stood at the entrance of the gate of the city, while the 2 companies rushed upon all who were in the field and killed them. And Abimelech fought against the city all that day, and he captured it and killed the people who were in it, and he razed the city and sowed it with salt." So, interestingly, Abimelech seems to be taking out his wrath on the inhabitants of the city instead of the people who actually rose up to fight against him. This is basically just him kind of mopping up his little battle that he had, and then taking the city back. And in his kind of fit of pique, he decides to completely destroy the city that he's been fighting to regain, and to sow its fields with salt so that the crops cannot be regrown in this area again. So when all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem heard of it, they entered the stronghold of the house of El-Bereth. Abimelech was told that all the leaders of the Tower of Shechem were gathered together, and Abimelech went up to Mount Zalmon, he and all of his people who were with him. And Abimelech took his axe in his hand and cut down a bundle of brushwood and took it up and laid it on his shoulder. And he said to the men who were with him, "What you have seen me do, hurry and do as I have done." So every one of the people cut down his bundle, and following Abimelech put it against the stronghold. And they set the stronghold on fire over them, so that all the people of the Tower of Shechem also died, about 1,000 men and women. So he kind of completes his vengeance against this people and against this city by putting it to the torch and then to the sword, and ultimately destroying it. And I don't know exactly what is in his mind at this point, but he decides to turn his ire towards the city of Thebez. Verse 50, it says that Abimelech went to Thebez and encamped against it and captured it. But there was a strong tower, and these words tower are more or less like a fortress, basically. It's not just a tall tower, it's a fortress. All the men and women and all the leaders of the city fled to it and shut themselves in, and they went up to the roof of the tower. Abimelech came to the tower and fought against it and drew near the door of the tower to burn it with fire. So we don't have any prior context of this city before this. We don't know what they did to make him mad. Maybe he just decided that at this point he was going to try and become a real king and start defeating other cities and growing his influence. But one way or the other, he's all jacked up with adrenaline and decides to continue the fight. So he comes to the tower to fight against it and wants to burn it with fire. And a certain woman threw an upper millstone on Abimelech's head and crushed his skull. So that is the benefit of having the high ground in the situation. And, this is not like the giant millstones that are on a mechanical mill. It's probably, do y'all know what a mortar and pestle is? It's probably like the stone part of that they use to crush up the grain or the spices. It's, something probably about a foot long, maybe 5 pounds or so, maybe 5 or 10 pounds. And So she drops it down off the tower and just nails him right on top of the head. And he evidently feels that this is going to be a mortal wound. Maybe this is when they start wearing helmets in battle after this, possibly. But so she drops it and crushes his skull, but he is still conscious. So he calls quickly to the young man, his armor bearer, and said to him, "Draw your sword and kill me, lest they say of me, a woman has killed me." And his young man thrust him through with the sword, and he died. And when the men of Israel saw that Abimelech was dead, everyone departed to his own home. Thus God returned the evil of Abimelech, which he committed against his father in killing his 70 brothers. And God also made all the evil of the men of Shechem return on their heads, and upon them came the curse of Jotham, the son of Jerubbaal. So the curse of Jotham was back when he said, "Let fire come out of Abimelech and devour the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo, and let fire come out from the leaders of Shechem and Beth Millo and devour Abimelech." So the hand of the Lord is turned against them through spiritual warfare, and then they go ahead and do all of the cleanup work for God. He doesn't even have to get a judge and put together an army inside of Israel to defeat these people. They simply defeat themselves because they are opposing the purposes of God. So after Abimelech, get back to some actual judges. There arose to save Israel Tola, the son of Pua, the son of Dodo. So this is a family with strange names. From the tribe of Issachar, he lived at Shamir in the hill country of Ephraim, and he judged Israel 23 years, and he died and was buried at Shamir. After him arose Jair, the Gileadite, who judged Israel 22 years, and he had 30 sons who rode on 30 donkeys, and they had 30 cities, called Havoth Jair to this day, which are in the land of Gilead. And Jair died and was buried in Kamon. So that's 2 of our 13 judges. Almost no context on their lives, but they must have had significant reigns over the people of Israel, because both of these guys actually end up reigning multiple years longer than Samson did. Samson ends up having 3 chapters, almost 100 verses of the book of Judges devoted to him, and he serves the Lord for a shorter period of time and reigns for a shorter period of time than these guys did. So we don't really know much about them. We know that Tola had a family with weird names, and that Jair seemed to be someone who leaned towards the direction that Gideon did, in the kind of maybe in the direction of a little bit of giving into the flesh. Has 30 sons, and interestingly, it says that they ride on 30 donkeys and rule 30 cities. So they were a wealthy, powerful family, and that's about all that we know about them. And then starting in verse 6, this is kind of the preamble now to the judge Jephthah. Says that the people of Israel again did what was evil in the sight of the Lord, and they served the Baals, the Ashtaroth, the god of Syria, Sidon, Moab, the Ammonites, and the Philistines. So this is 7 different gods or sets of gods that the people choose to serve after the judges Tola and Jair. And interestingly, this is one of the 7 times in the book of Judges that it says that the people of Israel did what was evil in the sight of the Lord. So they seem to be taking their rebellion against God and cranking it up to a whole new level. They are not just walking away from God and serving 1 or 2 other gods, but they are fully embracing the idolatry of all the peoples that live around them. They forsook the Lord and they did not serve him. So that's the major sin that the people of Israel engage in over and over and over again. The one that God has a tendency to send his people into bondage for is for forgetting about him and serving other gods. So the anger of the Lord was kindled against Israel, and he sold them into the hands of the Philistines and into the hands of the Ammonites. And they crushed and oppressed the people of Israel that year. For 18 years they oppressed all the people of Israel who were beyond the Jordan in the land of the Amorites, which is Gilead. And the Amorites crossed the Jordan to fight also against Judah and against Benjamin and the house of Ephraim, so that Israel was severely distressed. And the people of Israel cried out to the Lord, saying, "We have sinned against you because we have forsaken our God and have served the Baals. And the Lord said to the people of Israel, did I not save you from the Egyptians and from the Amorites, from the Ammonites and from the Philistines, the Sidonians also, and the Amalekites, and the Moabites oppressed you? And you cried out to me, and I saved you out of their hands. Yet you have forsaken me and served other gods. Therefore I will save you no more. Go and cry to the gods whom you have chosen. Let them save you in the time of your distress. And the people of Israel said to the Lord, we have sinned. Do to us whatever seems good to you. Only please deliver us this day. So interestingly, what the people of Israel have learned is that the worst that they receive while serving God is still better than the best that they receive while serving these false gods. So they say, do to us whatever seems good to you. Please just deliver us. So they want to be delivered from their oppressors, and they are willing, verse 16, to put away the foreign gods from among them, and they serve the Lord, and he became impatient over the misery of Israel. So again, God constantly has a sympathetic and soft heart towards his people, and he does not like seeing them in misery, which I think is really interesting. So the Ammonites were called to arms, and they encamped in Gilead, and the people of Israel came together, and they encamped at Mizpah. And the people, the leaders of Gilead, said to one another, who is the man who will fight against the Ammonites? He shall be head over all the inhabitants of Gilead. So that's where we're going to wrap it up for this week. The stage is set for Jephthah, who is another really interesting judge, and the stage is set for his ministry, fighting on behalf of the Lord. So does anybody have questions about our study tonight? I got to look, and I'm going to see where it talks about the law being put in Shechem as well. But did anybody have any other questions? It's interesting, not a lot of spiritual matters being dealt with in the study tonight. Mostly just the spiritual warfare dealt with between Abimelech and the people of Shechem. But okay, yes.
Does it say more specifically the number of sons that Gideon had, or does it use a generalization of 70?
It just says 70. So that is I have seen other places that is just meant to mean a lot. I have seen that before, and I kind of wondered the same thing when there's kind of subtractions from the number of 70, but it stays 70, But
Is it like there were 70 dead?
Yeah.
Before it said he had 70 sons, but that doesn't count Jonathan and Abimelech.
yeah,
In other places in the Bible, 70 means a lot.
I don't know, not in the Bible necessarily, but in like in the Hebrew language or in like tradition, it like seven's a number of completion, and adding on to,
10 times that.
yeah,
Is really complete.
yeah, it would be like analogous to Jesus telling his disciple to forgive 70 times 7. He didn't literally mean 490. He meant like endlessly. So it could be. I don't really know, but
Yeah, it's kind of interesting because in most other places it seems to be oddly specific when it comes to numbers. Right?
yeah.
What do you mean? I don't know.
Okay, so it's Joshua chapter 24, verse 26. I was looking right at it. I was on the, okay. So it says that Joshua wrote these words in the book of the law of God, and he took a large stone and set it up there under the terebinth that was at the sanctuary of the Lord. And Joshua said to all the people, behold, this stone shall be a witness against us, for it has heard all the words of the Lord that he spoke to us. Therefore, it will be a witness against you, lest you deal falsely with God. So, yeah, so that's where it says that that the law and the testimony was put there at Shechem. All right.
Do you have Josephus?
I have it on audio, but yeah, you mean the Antiquity of the Jews? Yeah.
Have you read about the destruction of the Jerusalem by the Romans?
Mm-hmm.
It's a hideous
Yeah,
form.
it is. Yeah.
I wonder if there's anything, if Josephus says anything more specifically about the number of sons.
That would be interesting to see. It's been it's been like 6 months since I went through it, so I probably should, if I want to reference him, I need to get a physical copy because it's impossible to look anything up on an audio book. So he does tend to give a lot of numbers, but he also tends to, from everything I've seen, just like really exaggerate a lot too. So yeah,
We refer to Josephus quite a bit.
yeah. Yeah, he's an interesting guy. Yeah, I mean, really, a lot of what he has comes from the scriptures anyway, and then from oral traditions. But yeah. All right. Well, Miss Donna, thank you for dinner, Mr. Eddie, and I feel 40 to 60% mentally slower today than normal. I'm telling y'all, this sickness has been like the most extreme in every way I've had in a long time, maybe ever. But
Worse than COVID?
I never had COVID, believe it or not. Yeah. I was wondering if this was COVID, but everybody just says that there's a huge flu going around, so I don't know, but
Lost any sense of smell or anything? Or
no,
not really?
no.
That's one of the